finally here. My 2020 custom bow build. What is it? What is it? What's it gonna be? Mathews. All right. Man, this is already looking good. Went with the 31-inch axle to axle. Did some custom stuff here with blue and silver. That's what's nice about Mathews Custom Bow Builder. It's got the new engaged grip. Woo! Behold. I brought the bow to the wizard, Kyle Douglas, former Vegas shoot champion, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Former Vegas shoot champion. He's gonna tell us some of the details and all the ins and outs on things you should do and shouldn't do when setting up your bow. So we're gonna pass the time over to this guy right here and put all the fixings on it. All right, man, what are we gonna start with first?
Let's stick on your sight, then we'll put on your rest, and then we'll kind of bolt everything on, and we'll tune her up and see how she does.
Okay, let's do it. All right, so why do you start with the rest first? Does it matter?
It doesn't really matter. You can do your sight or your rest or kind of whatever, and I like to just get everything kind of bolted on and set up, and then we'll start going to work on stuff. We'll stick your D-loop on, check your timing. That's kind of the first thing, and then we'll start looking at shooting through paper and stuff like that. If you were doing a cable, like tying your rest into the cable as a drop away, you kind of have to do it a little bit different because sometimes when you run that cable through there, that'll change your timing slightly. Okay. But with the Hamskea, you don't have to worry about that because we'll run it to your bottom loom. To your bottom loom. And it's just set. Yeah, you don't have to worry about it.
Perfect.
So much simpler, works way better. You'll have to adjust. This is kind of like your mast vertical adjustment. So get that set. Yeah, probably right there. And get your 20 close just by, you loosen these two bolts and slide that up and down and get your 20 close. And that'll give you the most distance you can on your roller.
Oh, okay. So you want that as far up as you can go?
Kind of. So you want your roller close to the top when you're setting your 20, and then you'll use this to adjust your up and down to get your 20 close so you can fine tune it with the roller. That way you'll get the most travel out of your sight that you can before you bottom it out.
That's a good tip.
So, yeah. I mean, ultimately what'll limit how far you can go is once your vanes start contacting your housing here, that's gonna limit your maximum distance. But sometimes if you don't have your sight set up right, it'll bottom out before they start hitting, and then you can't shoot as far as you want to shoot.
Gotcha.
So, we'll tighten this up. Okay, so what hole do you want your sight set on? You've got 3 different holes here. So
tell me why it matters.
There's a couple reasons. If you're torque tuning, that can affect it. So torque tuning is going to be, you're going to find out where the position of your rest in relation to the sight position is going to make it so that you can torque the bow and it'll hit the same spot left and right. So you just kind of move. There's 2 ways to do it. You can move your rest in and out here, or you can move your sight in and out here, and you get those to where when you torque your bow, your rest moves over, but your sight moves over the same amount to compensate for that. And brings you back in.
What would you recommend?
I kind of just start, and so there's another thing too, is when the closer you move your sight in here, the more distance you're going to get out of it before it bottoms out. Because the closer you move it in here, the less you have to move your sight to have more effect because it's a shorter lever arm.
Let's give myself more distance.
Okay, so we'll do that. And torque tuning isn't something that's, absolutely needed, and that's a pretty complex process. Not a lot of people will mess with that.
But just because you're so advanced.
Yeah,
you're so talented.
No, it's just one more thing you can play with. You'll see a lot more target archers do that than hunting guys.
Okay.
Probably mostly because the target archer guys know about it, and most hunting guys probably haven't ever even heard of it.
We're hunting guys. We're like we're novice when it comes to form and all the ins and outs. So that's why we want to get better.
We're gonna set your bow up like you're gonna shoot a tournament with it, and then you'll shoot even better for hunting.
Okay.
You don't want to compromise on accuracy just because it's a hunting bow. You're probably only going to get 1 shot, and you want to make that the best that you can possibly get. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we'll start there. So we're going to have to play with this. Once you get to move your 20, you'll have to loosen that up and down, but that's also going to screw up your second axis because you got to loosen, well, unless you can loosen just that bolt, but I don't think you can. Let's see.
You should be able to.
No, it won't move if the bottom one's tight.
Oh.
So you'll have to reset your second axis after you get your 20 close.
Okay.
Just because the way they've designed that sight, it's kind of a weird deal. And we'll stick the Hamskea level on here to do that.
So your second axis is what then for folks?
So basically your second axis is going to level your riser bar here to the level in your sight. That's going to make sure that when you're shooting at different distances, you're not going to get left and right travel. So basically when you're holding your bow straight up and down, your bubble's going to read true.
Okay.
Once you get into third axis, that's going to be for up and downhill, and that's totally different. Third axis moves back here, and that's actually going to pivot your sight this way on that axis, because what happens when you draw your bow back, you're going to get, you know, some torque induced from your cable rollers here, and that's going to slightly shift your bow, and you have to take all that into account when you do third axis. So we'll do that at full draw with the little pin here on the Hamskea, and basically third axis is going to make your bubble read true when you're aiming uphill and downhill, because if your sight's cockeyed, say it's cockeyed over here on flat ground, you'd never know. But as soon as you bring that downhill, well, now it's going to run, your bubble's going to run to the uphill side and give you a false reading, so then you're going to tilt your bow to adjust and you'll miss left or right.
Gotcha.
So we'll set that, and then that'll make sure that you're good all the way up and downhill.
So you'll help me set the second and third axis.
Mm-hmm. Third we're going to do after we get everything done. I kind of like to do it last. But your second will be good there. You don't have first on this sight, so we don't need to adjust that. Stick on your rest.
All right, so any tricks to this, setting up this Hamskea Trinity on this? Any things you should do or should know?
There's a few things. They've got multiple different positions on here for your set screw. I always like to put the set screw in there just so that it can't come loose. But yeah, I'll kind of show you as we're setting it up. You just need to make sure the tension's set right. The way you tie it on the limb, the position you tie it on the limb down here is going to matter, because you want your rest to start, when you're letting down, if you let down slowly, you want your rest to just start to fall around the middle of your arrow, unless you have a super long arrow. But as long as your arrow's cut fairly short, around the middle of your arrow or slightly in front of that, because then that gives you a big sweet spot where if something moves a little bit, it's still going to drop out of the way in time. So on the Hamskea, you want, basically what you're looking for, your arrow is going to flex coming out of your bow. So the Hamskea, you want it to guide your arrow until it flexes up and away from your rest. Then you want it to drop out of the way, so when the arrow flexes back down, it's not crashing into your rest again.
That would make sense.
So you get all the control out of it, and then when you don't need it anymore, it just drops out of the way. So you get all the forgiveness of like a blade style rest or anything like that without having to worry about contact as much.
Are you eyeballing that, or you level that right there?
You can do either. You know,
That's not super important.
Not necessarily, no. If you want to level it, usually I'll just take and set like a Hamskea level on your shelf and level your shelf that way, which is level. And then you can take the pin out of it. But it's not critical. On a rest that has a like a 90-degree launcher, like a Q80 or something like that, it is, because if it comes past center, then your arrow's going to drop a little bit, and then when it goes back up straight again, your arrow's going to like bump up a little bit during the shot and throw you off. But on something like this, no.
You almost eyeballed it right on.
Yeah.
That's why you don't need a level with Kyle.
I get my practice in with these. Do plenty of Hamskea stuff. Okay, so where we put this on the limb is going to determine when your rest drops. So we'll just kind of pick a starting point, and then if we need to adjust it, we'll have to kind of redo this, but we want to make sure that we get it right. So we're going to start somewhere about right in here. So on a parallel limb bow, typically you're going to be within 2 inches of your axle normally.
Okay.
Just depending on, every bow is going to be a little different. So we'll see what happens. And then I like to tie a half hitch here, just so it stays a little tighter. A lot of guys will loop it. They'll tie a loop and run it through the loop around the limb, and that doesn't get as tight on your limb here, so I tie a half hitch there and cinch it down really, really snug so it can't move on you. So I just shortened up that your cable here, because if not, you gotta run this like clear down to here, then it's doubled up all the way up there. So we just want that a little bit shorter. We'll kind of leave that loose until we get your. Oh, another thing on these rests, you wanna make sure you have enough tension on here. Usually from the factory, they should come with enough tension on all the new ones. This one doesn't have quite enough, so we're gonna rotate that.
Even though this isn't the new model, is that enough tension to keep this rest in play?
Oh yeah, dude, I cranked that tight. Yeah.
Because I remember you said the new one.
Here.
Yeah, okay. Because you said the new one has one that kind of anchors right there in the middle, so we don't have that. It should still be okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've never seen one come loose. They've got a 1/4-inch bolt on here, and you can really crank that sucker pretty tight.
Okay.
We'll tension this up just a little bit. This is something that a lot of people don't pay attention to, is their tension on here.
Now this is the tension for the string?
For the, your launcher tension on your rest.
Okay. You just kind of like get it to a good,
you want
a good stiffness, or?
Yeah, if it's too weak, it doesn't come up as well. It doesn't hold your arrow all the way up. Like sometimes it'll only come up partially. So you just want to make sure you got plenty of stiffness on there. And then you want to make sure these bolts are tightened evenly. If you do one too much tighter than the other, it kind of binds up the bearing in there.
Lots to know here, huh?
Oh yeah.
No wonder I don't set up my own bows.
There's a lot to it, and you gotta make sure it's right. I take probably way more time than I should setting up bows, but I'd much rather have them set up the right way than have somebody out there that has a bow that doesn't shoot straight. The last thing you need.
So where you're kind of deciding to tie that in?
So I'll show you. A lot of people will use, you'll see them stick like a level on their arrow and stuff and try and level the arrow to their string and whatnot. I've never done that because as soon as you go to tune it, you're going to throw the level off anyways because you may have to run knock high or knock low or whatever to tune it. So I'll just set it up to where the arrows, and depending on the bow, you want to go different heights in the bow. This is called your burger hole here where your rest mounts. A lot of people like to run the arrows through the center of their burger hole. And it's kind of personal preference on bow to bow. I tend to run mine either in the center of the burger hole or a little bit high. It just seems to work good for me the way I shoot. That tends to work pretty good, but you know, on an average bow, you're pretty safe bet if you're, you know, somewhere around the burger hole, a little bit above it is usually fine. Let's see your bullet here. I'll adjust this top knock. You know, just looking. So what I'm watching here, and I'm just seeing how parallel or how perpendicular the arrow is to the string, and you kind of look at the grooves in your bow and stuff. So we're running slightly downhill there. Bottom of the shaft is about the middle of the burger hole. That's about perfect for where I set my stuff up at. And we can always play with that later on if we need to, but typically that works pretty good. A lot of guys have a tendency to hold a little bit low on the target. That's pretty normal. Kind of the theory behind that is if you move your D-loop up on the string, it's pulling down, like you have a little bit more leverage pulling the bow up. So moving the D-loop up and down the string can slightly change the way that your bow holds, so sometimes you can play with that. But typically it's just going to be a real small adjustment. So I'll leave the top one set, and then we'll tie a knock set in here. So I always like to tie a bottom knock set in here. It's going to do a couple things for you. It'll eliminate your knock pinch. And then it's also going to make sure that your D-loop can't slide. Yeah. Make sure your D-loop can't slide, and then it'll, like if you have to change out your D-loop, technically it should go back in the exact same spot. You always want to double check everything and make sure. But it definitely makes a difference having a knock set tied in here. This is just BC wide knock point thread. It works really well because it holds tight and it stays pretty round and square so your knock don't slide over the top of it.
Oh, so you'll actually put you're calling this a knock pinch?
A knock set.
Knock set. So a knock set is just going to help keep that knock in place without traveling down your D-loop?
Well, yeah, basically it's going to eliminate your knock pinch. So a lot of times, like if you draw back and your arrow's trying to lift off the rest as you're drawing back, that's your knock's pinching.
Oh.
So that'll help get rid of that. And it's also going to make sure that nothing can move in here. The tight end knock set your D loop or nothing can't slide around. And then it just gives you a set point there. It's a lot better setup than just tying on the D loop. Oh, and if you do just the bottom knock set, it actually will make the when you hook your D loop on, it'll be centered up behind your arrow, because a lot of times your D loop is going to be more towards the top of the bow than the bottom, because of the way the bows are designed, unless it's like a bow where the burger hole's in the center of the bow, but usually it's high of center. You don't really want much wiggle room in here. If that can slide up and down, you've got too much slop going on.
What, this right here?
So yeah, you don't want it to go this way. You want just a teeny tiny little bit of movement in there, so that it doesn't pinch your knock. But if you get it too tight, then your knock's gonna start, or your arrow will start lifting up off your rest. Now we're gonna go ahead and set your center shot. You got your knock height set. For center shot, you know, most bows, if you run it pretty much down the center of the bow, you're gonna be pretty good. A lot of times on a Mathews, a lot of people will like to run it at 13/16 from the shelf here to the arrow. That's just kind of your center shot. It's
up
not
and down or left to right? Or
left and right, yeah. That's just kind of like the common thing for Mathews, is where you like to run that. And every bow's different. You know, different bows are going to like different things. Normally on like PSC and Hoyt and Bowtech and all those, most of them you're going to just run straight down the center of the bow.
But you'll come off the riser 3/16.
13/16, yeah.
13/16.
And you can run at center. Usually 13/16 runs out a little bit from center. Most of the time when I set them up, I just run them center, because that's how I like to run my stuff. I don't like it way out, and then I'll just move it around from there. But let's start at 13/16, and then we'll kind of play with it from there. We can play with top hats and whatever we need to do to get it to tune.
Okay. So what are you doing right now?
I'm just putting it into the draw board. We're gonna pull it back and then figure out your arrow length and how long we're gonna cut those. We're gonna also check your timing at the same time we're doing this, and we'll adjust your timing before we paper tune it. Your bottom's just slightly ahead.
So the timing's when whatever cam hit. So if I were to say, well, what's timing? Timing is when your stops hit the cable at the same time?
Yeah.
That's in timing?
Yeah, you want and you know, some people call it cam sync or timing or whatever words they want to use for it. Basically what you want to do is you want to have your stops roll over and touch your cables at the same time. Yeah, that way your cams are rolling over at the same time. If your bow's out of time, it's just going to be a little bit more finicky, not as forgiving, and you're going to, at some bows, you almost feel like two walls, because you'll feel one cam hit and then the other cam hit, so your wall's way more squishy and stuff.
Gotcha.
But it's not forgiving when it's out of time, normally.
So how do you put it back in time?
You're going to stick it in a press, and you'll either, you know, add twist or take out twist in the cables, depending on which cam you want to move and what way you want to move it.
Let's say this cam was out of time, you'd add a twist up at the top?
It depends on if it's ahead or behind. Usually I'll twist up the cam that's ahead, so I'll twist up the cable on the cam that's ahead.
Keep it from hitting.
And yeah, that'll just slow it down a little bit. Or you can loosen the other cable. So if this cam's hitting first, you could either tighten this cable or you could loosen this one.
Gotcha.
And that would do the same thing. So, and depending, like if one cable has way more twist in it than the other one, you may want to play with, you know, which one you're adjusting or whatever.
Gotcha.
Depending on that. Okay. So on arrow length, how long do you want them? I like to go short. The shorter, or the closer you can get your tip weight to your arrow, or to your rest here, technically the better your rest can guide your arrow, because your tip doesn't have all that leverage sticking out past it. So I cut mine really short. Some guys are worried about their broadhead being behind their finger or whatever, so they'll keep them out longer. But I cut mine like at most like a ½ inch or so in front of the rest there.
Maybe a happy medium between the two.
So maybe right there?
Let's see.
Like center your riser.
Maybe a little shorter. Yeah.
Just setting the center shot. So we're on that at 13/16 on the Mathews, which is just slightly outside of center.
13/16, and that's 13/16 off this riser.
Yeah.
Okay.
To the center of your arrow.
What's that? Are you doing right there? Just
tighten up the left and right adjustment on your wrist.
How'd you take that measurement right there?
Just with a tape measure.
Oh, okay.
So, and then we'll set your rest tension here. So in this Trinity, you have the little easy glide. You're just gonna set that down. You want enough tension on here to where it keeps your rest all the way down. You don't want a ton of extra tension because it won't come up at the right time. And you can slightly adjust the timing on your rest by how tight this cord is here. Another little thing that I do is I'll always kind of grab a hold of them, like pre-stretch them in. A lot of times this cord has a little bit of stretch when it's brand new, so it'll take a minute to break in. But if you kind of pre-stretch it in like that, you'll see how now it's not all the way down tight. So that kind of eliminates some of the shoot-in time on them. That's why the Hamskeas are so nice, is because if you're out in the field and say something happened and this cord, for some reason your rest wasn't all the way down or whatever,
you could just tighten
tighten it. Or if, like, say you cut the cord with your broadhead or whatever you did, you could run a shoelace or a string or whatever you wanted to. Any piece of string you could run through here, and as long as that rest is just set down tight, it's still going to shoot the exact same.
It should still come up when you draw.
Yep, you're not going to have any change in point impact or anything. So that's a really nice thing about the Hamskeas. They're bulletproof. You're never going to have a problem with them as it is, but if for some weird reason you did, you can fix it in the field super easy. Where with like a cable-driven rest, you're going to have to retie that into the cable, and the timing on it's super, super critical, and it's hard to do. So normally what I like to do is I'll shoot it first and get it really close, and then we'll have you shoot it to fine-tune once we get everything kind of set. Because you'll probably shoot a little different than I do. You should draw level with your target, technically. You'll see a lot of us that have a bad habit of, we'll come up and then bring it down. We're drawing level. We're not like pointing at the sky and shooting. But it's just,
so should you go above your target when you draw?
No, you
go right on your target.
Yep.
Because then you don't have to anchor and then.
Yep. Best thing, and you want to come in when you draw back. You want your sight to be about that far above where you're going to aim. So you draw back, you're already kind of preset, and you just settle in just slightly, and then, you're already ready to shoot. So you don't have to have such a big movement, try and find your target and stuff. So I'll kind of look at my target as I'm drawing, and you're kind of almost pre-aiming a little bit. You don't want to come in below your target though.
Because then you got to come up.
You got to come up. You don't want to come up because coming up will use way more muscles. It's pulling a lot of muscles to bring your bow up to aim at the target. Whereas if you come in from the top, you just relax down in and just settle rather than using all your muscles. Archery is all about keeping your muscles relaxed and bone-on-bone contact rather than like muscles holding things in place. First shot bullet hole. It don't get no better than that.
Whoa, buddy!
I guess we eyeballed everything pretty close, huh?
Yeah. Talk about your grip to eliminate torque.
Okay. So on your grip is super critical. A lot of guys that don't know any better, they'll just grab onto the riser.
Right.
And that induces a lot of torque into your shot. So basically, you're trying to run that bow down the pad of your thumb here, kind of paralleling your lifeline there, that crease in your hand.
Okay.
So basically, if I was to explain it to somebody, it's almost like you're sticking your hand out and telling somebody to stop, and then turn your fingers out to a 45. And then you'll curl in, if you curl in the bottom three and kind of make an L there. So basically your knuckles with a 45-degree angle with your riser, and you want the back of your hand flat to you. You don't want it wrapped around the bow. Yeah. So if you're wrapped around the bow here,
right.
If it's on the side, you're going to put all that pressure on the left-hand side of the grip, which isn't, you're not grabbing the bow and twisting it, but it's still going to torque it because it's going to load the bow that way. So you want flat, even tension across the back here, and you don't want to torque or influence it in any way. You could have your hand completely open or closed, and it shouldn't change anything because it's the tension of that bow keeping it in your hand. You don't want to, on the front of the bow, you don't want to grab onto your bow at all. If you have to, you can lightly touch the front.
When you're drawing.
Yeah, and normally you don't want to adjust your grip once you've drawn. So you'll hook your release on, set your grip, draw back, and leave it. Because if you adjust your grip at full draw, sometimes your skin will get like bound up or like tension underneath it. Then when you shoot, that tension releases and the bow shifts.
Gotcha.
So you want to set your grip and draw back. But yeah, If you touch the front of the razor, it has to be real light, because otherwise, if you're squeezing it, you're going to be torquing your bow,
Right.
and you'll see left and right variance.
Right. Okay.
So
that bottom hole.
So you'll see when we move back, you just have a little bit of variance. That's why I like to paper tune from a little farther away, because at first it looks really good, but then when you step back a little bit, it opens up just a teeny tiny bit.
So what adjustment are you going to make now?
So with a little bit of a left hair like that, we'll bump your rest just slightly. If I were to shift your top hats around, that's probably going to move it too much. So we'll just barely bump your rest a little bit, and if that don't fix it, then we'll move your top hats if a little bump don't fix it.
Because where's just for the viewer, where'd your fletchings go through? Right here?
So so the center of your hole is right here, and then your fletchings are just on the top right corner of it.
Oh, okay.
So we'll fix left and right first, and then we'll fix up.
But you would say that's a left tear because you're
they're a right tear.
A right tear.
Yep. Because your fletchings are right of the point of impact.
Okay.
Or of your tip, basically.
So that's a right tear.
Yep.
So you're going to adjust it left.
The rest will come slightly left. Yeah, we don't want to go too far because then we'll be way out of center shot. So if it's too much, then we just play with the top hats here, and basically that'll shim your cam one way or the other, and do that. But on just a teeny little one, usually when you move the top hats, that's going to go too far.
Gotcha.
So we just want to make a slight tweak. That's the nice thing about these Hamskeas with the micro tune too. When you loosen it, you don't have to try and hold it tight.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to move with that micro tune. So we'll just twist that just a little bit, and then tighten it back up. There you go. So that's looking a lot better.
That looks really good, doesn't it?
Yeah. So just a teeny little tweak, and we got it back to centered.
First shot with a new V3. Can't wait to screw this up. Just kidding. What release should I use?
Let's stick on your rest and your quiver and everything that you're going to shoot it with.
Okay.
And make sure that we're tuned with that. Because sometimes like adding weight to different places on your bow will change like the moment of inertia of your bow and stuff.
So did you catch that? So we're going to add everything up as if we're going to be shooting and hunting with this so that it's in proper tune with everything we're doing here. Yeah. Are you going to actually put arrows in the bow? Or is that not necessary?
I mean, arrows it's not going to add enough weight to probably mess with it. Technically, if you want to be super, super critical, you probably would want to have arrows in your quiver. I mean, exactly like you're going to hunt with it.
Is how you want to tune it.
Yep. Okay. Because otherwise, you're changing stuff and it can be out of tune when you go to hunt. So just wrap. Once you kind of get on, sort of on the target, just put your thumb
better?
barely.
Should it be like right there?
Yep. Yep. So bring your thumb around and then just slowly touch that barrel. Yep. There you go. Just feel it and then just slowly squeeze it.
How's my elbow right there?
That's looking a little better. That was better.
So how should I be knocking this? We haven't.
We'll have to tune the arrow in.
Okay. Tune the arrow.
Normally I always put it so that the notch on your nock goes towards you. So the other way.
What? Oh, that one?
Yep. See how it's got that little bump on there?
Torque looked okay.
Just like that. Your elbow's looking better. You don't want to bring it up. You want your forearm level, but straight away from the target. That's looking better.
Should my elbow go up or no?
No, you want it level. You know what? Your draw length may not be bad. You're kind of anchoring a little far back. What one was that one? This one?
Yes.
Okay, so you're tearing a little bit low left.
So, right here then?
Yeah, so I take these knuckles and split them right where your jaw turns up.
I feel it now. I feel it.
So you're
I just don't know what to do with this. Should this be like this or like this?
No,
this elbow.
You want your forearm here to be parallel with the ground, and you want your elbow to be pointing straight away from the target. You don't want it like chicken wing like that. And
straight away from the target.
You don't want it back behind your head, yeah. But yeah, so just kind of a natural right there. But you're anchoring. When I'm looking at where your nock is positioned on your face, it's a little far back on your face, so your draw length may be right. You're just anchoring a little bit
so
farther
I could be
back.
Anchoring. Okay.
There you go. So slide it just down and forward, kind of right in there. That looks a lot better. So you want your fingers not flat against your face. You want them twisted down just a little bit, actually.
Like that?
Yep, just like that.
Is this going to affect how the arrow shoots if I do this or this?
Slightly, yeah. Yep. So you just want to be really consistent on how you set
whatever I do.
There we go. That's a good hole.
That's a good hole.
So
That's a good hole, Thomas.
Yeah, that's better. Got rid of that little bit of left.
Yeah,
there.
I took the tension off and I just let it settle into my thumb meat.
Yep.
And then tried to get my elbow straight.
Yep. You just want everything in line, and you want a real soft front hand. The softer your front hand is, the more consistent you'll be left and right because you won't be torquing it, and then you're also going to hold steadier. So basically from your elbow to the end of your fingertips, those muscles just completely relaxed.
Okay.
The softer you can get those, the steadier you're going to hold. Because as soon as those tense up, they're going to be firing all different, and it's going to be wanting to wiggle a little bit.
Sure.
Or if they're just all relaxed, it's just going to be basically your bone-on-bone contact all the way from your shoulder joint all the way to the end of your hand. You want the bones to hold your bow in place rather than your muscles.
Gotcha.
So.
Now, there's a lot of different things with people setting their peeps. A lot of people said the strings, you should get the strings to set in. What's your theory on that? Does it matter that much?
I put the peep in and shoot it, and if it's twisting a bunch and stuff on me,
Adjust it later.
then adjust a little bit later. Yeah, because the height's never going to change. You set the height, you can put a half a twist in your string in 2 seconds and fix the rotation on it.
Gotcha.
So, and you will want to double check the tune and timing and all that after you've shot it for a while and the strings have kind of settled in.
Okay.
I would definitely recommend checking it and making sure everything stayed the same.
Okay.
But
perfect.
Let's pop that in there. Where's the peep?
You
got a good peep too, dude. These Raptor peeps are the bomb.
You like them?
Mm-hmm. Why you shoot these Hamskea peeps versus like a standard peep is going to be the light baffles. So it's got like the little baffles in there. So if the light comes in at like a weird angle, it's going to reflect back out of there. So you're only getting light directly from the target to your eye. So your peep's going to look a lot cleaner. And then if you go from like different lighting conditions, your point of impact is going to be a lot more consistent. Sometimes if you shoot like later at night when it's starting to get dark, you'll start hitting low. Or if you shoot from like the light into the shade or the shade into the light, you'll have point of impact changes. Or if the sun like is on one side of you versus the other. Or with this Hamskea peep, you don't see that because of those light baffles in there.
Oh, okay.
So
the advantage of that is the light baffles, really.
Yeah. It's a little bit longer housing, and then those light baffles in there are amazing. Normally you want your peep to be just the same size as the outside of your housing. So you can set it up. If you have a lot of gap, sometimes you'll get off-centered a little bit here, and that'll throw you. Your groups will open up a little bit, where if it's tighter, it won't do that. You don't want to get too small to where it's inside there, because then it'll float around and you can't center it that way. So the closer you can get to the size of your scope housing here, the better off you are. So, and you always want to go where this string separator is, that way you get the center of the bundle.
Oh, okay.
If you get off one on your strands, it'll do weird things, or people want to twist and stuff. So, and if like you lost that or it wasn't in there or whatever, I just count them out. So you have half
like
the
individual
strands.
strings.
Yep.
Wow.
You have half the strand on each side. Normally your standard bowstrings will have 24 strands, so you'll have 12 on each side. I put a tie around your peep here, just so that we can shoot it while we're getting the height set without having to worry, like if something happened, it can't come flying out of there. All right, that's just kind of a safety thing. If your peep was to fly out of your string, it can bounce off your riser and whack you in the eye.
Kill you?
Yeah, wouldn't happen unless you dry fired it or something.
Peep to the eye, guy dies.
Okay, so we want you to set your peep with your eyes closed. So draw back, close your eyes, get your anchor set, your nose touching everything. When you open them, we want that peep perfectly centered around your housing. If you have to move your head up or down, we need to fit your peep better.
Okay.
So just go up, probably. Okay. Go ahead and let it down or shoot it.
Yeah, that was confusing there. I was like, what do I...
Where's my peep?
I'm like, am I anchored in the wrong spot? That's interesting. I didn't know that. So you don't want this peep sight to be over-encompassing over your sight housing. So we're going to actually bump this down so that when I look through it, that I don't see any white space around my sight through my peep, my sight housing through my peep. All right, here we go. We're going to shoot another one through and draw this, close my eyes, and see if that's where it needs to be.
Too high, too low?
Perfect.
Perfect, okay.
So I feel like I was getting, this is hitting right here somewhere. That's probably not good, is it?
No, you want it to come, probably the crease in the middle of your palm, maybe just on the left edge of the grip over here.
So that needs to be, all of it needs to be in the meat.
Yeah.
Because it's hitting bone somewhere.
Yeah, and you want it, you know, different people shoot a little different grips, but I tend to like to run, that crease in my palm, just kind of on the left edge of the grip there. So basically my lifeline almost runs up the left-hand side of the grip on my bow, so it's right on the pad of your thumb right there.
Yeah, I was hitting a little bit of bone in there. All right, so now we're going to tie in the peep. More of a permanent thing. Obviously, if it changes, we can go in and cut it out and adjust it later. But now with the new thumb release, I'm anchoring close to the same. I'm anchoring pretty much in the same spot, more consistent. When I close my eyes and I open up, I see that peep just over the sight housing. So we're gonna go ahead and call it good and anchored in there.
On these Hamskea peeps, I like to time in a little bit different than I would just a standard peep. Just where they're a little bit longer housing and stuff, I like to kind of wrap the serving in between the peep housing and the string here and protect it. And it'll also lock it in super, super solid, so there's no way you can ever get that to move unless you cut it out. So I kind of start off with a constrictor knot here and go around the peep with it. Like that. You always want to make sure everything's down in the grooves. And when you tie a peep in, you want to make sure that whatever way you tie it in, there's at least a couple wraps around the peep here. That way there's no way that it can fly. Like if you say you dry fire or something like that, the peep can't pop out and bounce off the riser and come get your eye or anything like that.
And kill you.
Yeah. So, and then I'll just run half hitches down both sides. And this will look a little different than what you're probably used to seeing on peeps, but it works way better. It's a pain for me because it takes longer for me to tie it in this way and longer to cut it out if I have to adjust it, but it's worth it to have people's peeps not move on them and stay put a little better.
So what you're doing now is making sure it's not going to come back and twist on you.
Yeah, I'm just going to put a couple shots there because sometimes after you put it in the press and tie it in, it needs to settle just a little bit. We just want to make sure it's coming back straight to your eye, not cockeyed. See how that's twisted there? Just a little bit.
What do you do about that?
So it depends on how bad it is and what way it's going. If it's just slightly, you just take your D-loop and you can push it around the string one way or the other just to tweak it a little bit. If it's off very much, we'll just put a half a twist or so in your string to bring that back around where it needs to go. That looks fairly straight.
Yeah. I mean, a little bit in the left corner, but...
Yeah, so you'll just have to play with your D-loop a little bit.
What do you mean play with it?
Do you see how I push it around the string? See how it's kind of off-centered here? So when you hook on, it's going to look a little crooked, but your peep will twist as you draw back and stuff.
Okay.
And your D-loop, a lot of times, will want to work its way around the string, so sometimes you kind of have to, play with how that sits in there. We'll set your third. I'll serve in that cable a little bit, and then we're good to go. See, and I've got a level line here on the wall, and that's what I'm using. So I'm using these two ends of the pin and go off those rather than off the levels, because the levels aren't going to be accurate once you start aiming up and down here.
So that pin is perfect up and down.
That's too far off to the side, yeah. Yeah, because the pin, you can rotate the level anyway this way, and that pin's still going to be straight up and down. Or the bubble, it's not.
Show them that third axis.
Yeah, that's how your third axis moves.
Okay. Did you know?
That way.
I never even mess with that.
Yeah. So what happens is, say your sight's like I was explaining earlier, if it's totally cockeyed this way, level ground, it's still going to read level no matter what you do. You go downhill, now that bubble's on an angle here, so your bubble's going to run uphill, and you'll get a false reading. So that's why you just have to set your third axis. That's what has to be done full draw. So you'll sight in your 4 pins, and then we'll put a mark on here. And then you'll go, I set that on 20, oh well. And then sight in like 100, and then you build a tape off those 2 marks, and everything
20 and 100? Or is it 60?
Well, you'll be,
20,
if you're doing
30,
20,
50 and 100.
Yeah, so 50 and 100. Everything else will be dead on the money versus like if you plug it in the computer, it's close, but it's not dead. But if you do those 2 by hand, it's dead on.
I think on Hamskea it says do it off 60 and 100 or something. I'll show you the direction.
It'll say different things, but do it off 50 and 100.
Okay. So were you trying to do that and have that level?
Nope. On third, I'm only worried about this pin. Because if for some reason this wasn't machined square or something like that, that bubble could be off and stuff like that. And it, if the bow's torqued or whatever.
And you mean square, you mean even with this line.
Yeah, so the pin is what you set third axis with. So you set these 2 dots on the end of the pin on that level line when you're aiming downhill, and then you adjust the bubble in your sight to match that. When those dots are on the line there, you want your bubble to be level.
Oh, okay.
So That's how you
So
set third.
she's level then?
Yep.
So we're done.
Yep, and then I'll just show you one little thing I do on your Hamskea. A lot of times I'll take and serve a little bit on this, just so there's no way, like this, if this slipped a little bit, that can't move on you, like your cord can't move. It's just kind of another way to bulletproof it.
So you're just gonna you're just gonna put an anchor in here so it doesn't hike up?
Yep.
I don't know if I've ever had a tuning this thorough, ever, and have it had it explained, even though
Most
I need to do it.
shops won't.
I need to do it 10 more times to probably understand everything better, you know?
Yeah. So I like to run that bottom pin most of the way down to get the max distance out of your housing before you run out. Because if your pins are way up here, you know, you've got that big of a gap.
But technically, wouldn't you want to throw this all the way up?
That's not going to change anything because the sight's going to have to be in the same position no matter what for it to hit on. So you want the roller as high up as you can get it, and then this will just have to get set wherever it has to get set.
Is the roller up all the way?
Yep. Yeah, so that's your lock there. So we'll leave that lock for now until we get your pins and stuff going, and then we can do a tape.
So you're saying go down all the way on this bottom one?
Yep, and then we'll start with your, well, we'll get you on target, get out to 50, sight in the 50, then you'll set your other pins up after that.
Okay.
That way, because if you try to do your 20 and you slide it down too far, then you run out of room by the time you hit the 50. So I kind of do it backwards.
So what adjustments did you make?
These two screws here, and then it'll let your sight tilt. So I just leveled this bubble's level, and I made sure that bubble matches it.
Oh, okay.
So you can see those two are dead on.
So we're good there.
Yep.
Third axis set, second set.
Yep.
Second axis, in theory, shouldn't need to move again.
Nope.
Now it's a matter of sighting in 50 yards first, which we'll build some arrows. We'll come back later and do that. This will more or less conclude the bow build and the tuning setup.
Yeah, your bow's ready to go shoot. You just got to get sight in now.
Okay, so I'm gonna have Kyle build me some arrows, and then we'll come back, do another video on setting a sight tape. Sighting in at 50, setting the sight tape, making sure we're dialed, and then we'll test it at distance.
Yep.
Cool, thanks man.
Perfect, yeah.